This episode is proudly supported by Monash University, promoting the Master of Indigenous Business Leadership program. For more information, head to the link in our show notes or visit www.monash.edu/Indigenous-business-leadership.
Welcome to the Black Magic Woman podcast with Mundanara Bayles. Welcome to the Black Magic Woman and Monash University Partnership Series. I am so excited to be able to finally share these amazing stories with current students as well as staff and guest presenters that have been part of the Moible program. I am part of the inaugural cohort and I had the absolute pleasure to be in a class when Laura Thompson, co-founder of Clothing the Gaps, presented their story, their journey, and some of the amazing insights into how community have actually been able to pivot their whole business model, especially during a global pandemic. Laura is an amazing businesswoman. She is a mother. She has been a driving force behind big campaigns such as Free the Flag. I'm actually wearing one of the Clothing the Gaps tees, the Always Was, Always Will Be, which was really big during the Black Lives Matter movement. I can't wait for you to hear Laura's story. I asked her questions about business, leadership, and how she was able to support her team to take the business to where it is today. I hope you enjoy this yarn. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Black Magic Woman podcast. My name is Mundanara Bayles, and for those that have not listened to an episode before, it is all about conversations. But this one is a special episode. It's actually part of the Monash Business School and William Cooper Institute, the Master of Business. Well, it's actually the Masters of Indigenous Business Leadership program, also known as Moible. We are here to talk about the program, the course. Students are sharing their experiences, and also just people that are also in business. So on that note, before we kick off this deadly yarn, I would like to acknowledge that I'm on the lands of the Wurundjeri peoples here in the Kulin Nations in Melbourne, aka Naarm. And I'd also like to extend my respects to their elders past and present and acknowledge that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. As First Nations peoples living in this country, now known as Australia, we have never ceded our sovereignty. So, in saying that, I'm going to introduce, well, actually, Laura, I'm going to get you to do your introduction. This is a deadly sister that I met once very briefly. I'm going to share that with you in just a moment. But before I do, can you share with our guests and also our listeners now on YouTube your name, your mob, and just tell us a little bit about where you grew up?
Yeah, so my name's Laura Thompson. I'm a Gunditjmara woman. I grew up in Fitzroy, Collingwood, sort of, I know like yourself, Mara, like in the rise of Aboriginal community-controlled health services. So my family, we're one of many families to found the Aboriginal Health Service in Fitzroy. So I grew up in that community.
Can I say quickly, the Aboriginal Health Service in Fitzroy and the Aboriginal Medical Service in Redfern, I think they started in the same year. Or Fitzroy started and Redfern popped up, or Redfern started Fitzroy. But they're the two that their names are always mentioned as this is where it began. Yeah. So your family were part of that?
Yeah.
Too deadly.
So it was just, so I guess that was my, growing up there. My family come off the mission in Framlingham and sort of grew up in the housing estate in around Fitzroy, and it's part of that community in Melbourne. I've like one of those babies that grew up in, community control.
Yeah. And what about in terms of family? Have you got children? Do you come from a big family?
It's so funny. I always forget my kids. Hey. Also, I've got 3 children, Rose, Sol and Marley. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, from a really big, strong family with lots of strong Black women in it. It's just shared experience amongst lots of mob as well. So, yeah.
And you obviously live here in Melbourne. Yeah. And I came across you at the Melbourne Business School, actually. you came up and you gave me these earrings, these exact earrings, right? Not the ones I went, but the exact earrings. Bunjil in your language, yep. In the Wonnarua language, I've forgotten I've got a few of the words from my mother's language, but we don't have much of it left. But the eagle is our totem. And when you hand them to me, I was like wondering, who is this woman? And I asked her at my table, I was like, oh my God, she just gave me these earrings. She has no idea that these are my totem. I'll never forget that moment. But today literally is the first time that we've probably met in person. I'm a big fan of yours, my sister. The work that you do and continue to do inspires not just me, but a whole lot of our population here in this country and also around the world. I'm going to hand it over to you in terms of, can you introduce or just share with our listeners, how did you found or co-found Clothing the Gaps? Like that's when most people, and let me just kind of, if you're thinking, who is Clothing the Gaps? Well, this Deadly Sister's behind it. This is probably the T-shirt that most people would recognise, and I wear this all the time. It's actually my profile pic on my Insta. How did Clothing the Gap, because the S was added on later, let's go back to the original Clothing the Gap. How did that come to life? What's the background there?
Oh, just firstly on the earrings, Mara, when I heard you spoke and accept your award, there was something about you that really touched me, and often I'll carry a pair of earrings to gift to someone and I was like, that's my woman. I need to give her these earrings. Koorie Circle is an earrings business that I've had, probably for about 10 years now. And, when I walked in, we talk about the power of fashion. I walked in and I saw you wearing those Bunjils earrings. That's beautiful. It's fitting. This is the totem. This is the creative spirit of this country here. I just felt all of that. Just from you wearing those earrings here today, that you're connecting to this place through fashion. So I've always felt stronger when I've worn different things. And for me, I loved earrings. So creating the earrings and putting them on was something like, I don't know, to be able to create Aboriginal earrings. And I think Aboriginal women and all women now really embrace that power that they get from putting their culture in their ears as well.
Or representing an Indigenous business. So you do not need to be an Indigenous person. And, some of our brothers and sisters and LGBTIQ plus people as well love wearing our earrings that represent our people and our culture, our ancestry, our totems. But to be able to support an Indigenous woman in business is one of the main reasons, right? Other than I connect with it and I'm representing, I always think about when someone asks me, where did you get your earrings from? I'm like, that's a way you can support a Black business, right? So there's two things that I get out of it. I draw strength from it, but I know that I am creating impact by getting people to actually go to Insta and go and buy a pair.
And the flow-on effect for that, like we talk about my grandkids and them, me sort of being the first person that they know that had a business, when they sold a pair of earrings or they worked in Clothing the Gaps, that's the first time they're the one holding the FPOS machine. They're the one behind the counter. This is the opportunity business provides mob that they would never probably ever get to experience.
So Clothing the Gaps is a big, big part of, has been a big part of a movement. Because in terms of that T-shirt, right, Free the Flag was an initiative that there was a lot of people behind it, but you were one of the main peoples, right? Clothing the Gap's done the tees and got that message out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
And the T-shirt that you're wearing as well today.
Yeah.
The flag tee.
It's been, Clothing the Gaps, it's been 3 years and it's
is that all? Yeah. It's only 3 years old.
Yeah.
3 years
young. I know. 3 years young.
Wow.
So I mentioned earlier, I was raised in community control, and I just imagined, like most mob, if you ask them where they're going to work, they might have ambitions to work somewhere else, but then you ask them, I remember asking some school kids this, but where do you really think you're going to work? I'll say, probably just at the AMS or on the dole, which is... usually what we thought our career path was. And for me, my career path was, I'm going to work in the AMS.
Yeah.
And I did for over 20 years in health promotion, which I loved because you got to be creative. It was a very strength-based model.
With mob.
Yeah, every day.
Every day. Walking in an organisation where you see mob. And you probably related to half of them that were coming into the medical centre. So if you don't know what the AMS is, it's an acronym that nearly every black fella in Australia would know. It's the Aboriginal Medical Service, the AMS.
And it was so comfortable, right, working in that setting because everyone knows you, but they also know how you're related and connected. So it's that really like that safe black space. And I was super comfortable there.
Yes.
And I loved it. And I was good at what I did in health promotion around healthy lifestyle, tackling Indigenous smoking teams. I was good at it. But I was getting a bit frustrated just by like the restrictions of the funding around. And there still is a lot of money around tackling Indigenous smoking, so I always had to weave that into the work, but I didn't feel like it was what Mob really wanted to yarn about. They wanted to talk about let's get moving, like wanted to focus more on healthy lifestyle, but the funding was attached to smoking. Yeah, and I was like, nah, like maybe I could start a business. This is where I met Sarah. She actually come to me as a student. And we get lots of like non-Indigenous students that they want to do their placement in Aboriginal medical services. And I had quite a few, and there was just a long list of
course,
students.
I can imagine, yeah.
But Sarah just kept ringing, and I was just like, Sarah, cool, but what makes you different from, you know, Emma and Jenny and all the rest? And she said, I've been volunteering, you know, since I was 16. And, you know, she had done previous work experience in a local co-op. So it wasn't even though she was only really young at the time and at uni, she had put herself in other spaces to get experience working in other Aboriginal communities. Yeah. I thought, fair enough, I'll take you on. And what I really saw was that we really were able to grow the team together to really become like my right-hand person on programs. And we worked together for probably about 4 years at VARS.
So she was working in the Aboriginal Medical Service with you? Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
So she got that proper training
and
in a black organisation.
Yeah.
With, black fellas. Yeah.
I said, let's continue to do this outside. And Sarah, and it's always hard, I think, for white fellas being in that space, for people to be able to trust and connect and for her to build that rapport. But
of course.
Sarah, we're in a healthy lifestyle team, but Sarah used to be 60 kilos heavier than what she was. And she told me that on the slide because when she went to, into VARS with me, she was already a much smaller person. So no one knew that she used to be a much bigger woman. Mm-hmm. And I said, you need to tell this story.
Yeah.
You need
a weight loss journey.
Yeah, you need to tell this to the other girls who are struggling with their weight because they're going to connect to you now.
Yes.
And I think Sarah done it. Look at Sarah. Oh my God. Now look at Sarah.
Someone to talk to and yarn to about, you know, the journey, the options.
She gets it.
Yeah.
You know, she understood she's being that journey. No one expected that of her. So when she said to me that she was willing to share that story, I was like, to the local newspaper, I put it straight on the front page. And everyone saw it and people were able to relate to it differently from a personal shared experience. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we went out and we decided to start a health promotion business called Spark Health. Wasn't a great name, but it's all we had.
Spark. Yeah.
And it wasn't taken, which is another story. Yeah. We started Spark Health, and what I realised was very quickly that there's not really a business for health promotion. Like, who's going to pay me to tell them to drink more water, eat more vegetables, move more, smoke less? Like, it wasn't really a thing. But what we found ourselves doing is subcontracting to other Aboriginal organisations, you know, nearly across the country and using our expertise to deliver their programs in their communities. Then COVID hit. And all of those grassroots programs that we're running, like including local footy clubs, we're delivering health promotion to in prisons to Aboriginal people. So we're doing lots of fun things. And we're creatives at heart. Like we like to say, we're health promotion entertainers. Like we're even running game shows.
Yeah.
Like fake game shows. Like we've surveyed 100 of the mob about what things you shouldn't do. And like Sarah she should introduce herself as a funny and taller Grant Denyer.
Yeah.
And I was like the idiot. So we did lots of crazy things just to pay the bills.
Yeah, but to engage with mob, you were actually engaging with mob and doing what you needed to do to actually make sure that they could participate. or kind of connect with the messaging in a fun way. I love the fact that you were like really creative in how to get that message to our mob.
And we need to be, right?
Yeah.
Like no one needs to be bored by seeing another health promotion.
Yes, here's a flyer, read it.
Yeah. It's really cute. It could be amazing graphics, but how are they engaged? Like we'd have a matching dance to the flyer.
I love it.
That was the kind of person I was. Anyway.
You're paying your bills. So that was one thing with your new business.
I was paying the bills. COVID hit. We freaked out. There was 2 of us in the business. I freaked out because we couldn't deliver our grassroots programs. But we'd always been creating merch as an incentive for people to participate. I always say it's basically a bribe. Come to, 4 out of
And we'll give you a free
session.
T-shirt.
Yeah.
I love it.
And it works.
Hey, Deadly Choices have been doing it.
Exactly.
It's a genius idea.
People love it. And at that time, there wasn't a whole lot of merch. And when you earned this merch, you're part of a community, like almost like an exclusive club because you'd done the things to get it. Mm-hmm. So when COVID hit, I thought, well, I need to keep just things ticking over. Maybe we can put more things online. And I had a Narungga woman, Sienna Cuchulo, come on really early with us as a volunteer. And she's just like the stylish one in the team. She's gorgeous.
And a marathon runner. So you could check out an earlier episode of the Deadly Sister Sienna. You've got to hear her story. I had her on Black Magic Woman a while ago because Laura was like, no, you can take her. She's amazing. Like, you need to hear her story. And sis literally loved her story. So Sienna came in.
Yeah, and she said, look, no offence, Laura, I love your T-shirts, but I asked my friends at uni and they said they would wear them. And I went, cool, all right, well, you do a better job then. Here's $500, design some T-shirts. And at that point, I'd made a decision for Spark Health had this merch. It was called Spark Merch, which wasn't exciting either. And it got to the point where this one non-Indigenous fella was trying to buy engaging Spark merch, and he kept saying, can I wear it? I'm not black. Am I allowed? And the yarn was gone for about 5 minutes. I was getting retired. And I said, mate, if you buy it, you're helping close the gap. And he goes, where do I tap? So I just had to say close the gap. And I sent a message to Sarah and it was 3 text messages. I went, clothing, the gap.
That's it. That's how it came about.
For this fellow who just was frustrating me. And I said, you close the gap and buy the tea. And he goes,
close the gap and buy the tea, you're closing the gap. Yep.
And there was like clothing the gap. And that, and then we talk about power of branding, that shift allowed people to see what it actually meant for them to buy the tea, and that, allowed people to step into it. So once we had Clothing the Gap as a name, that really set us up. And you know what? Sienna was right. Like, we did streetwear. It was niche. There was a market for it. And we started to dress what you'd probably call like your uni students and mob.
Wow. And it's taken off. So 3 years, Clothing the Gap was born. T-shirts are hitting the street. The Black Lives Matter movement. I know from being in a block at Monash Uni, you actually came along and you was one of the guest presenters in one of our, I think, marketing. But this is the kind of people that you meet in the master's program, real mob doing real business and talking about real life experiences and challenges and barriers and successes as well. So the Black Lives Matter movement, I being in the session that you presented to us, you said the T-shirts took off.
Yeah, which was, when I think about COVID, I think about Black Lives Matter movement because it was in the first hard lockdown. It was the time where we launched the business, and we had this T-shirt. At the time, we didn't have a whole lot. We had this T-shirt and a Freed the Flag T-shirt. And people were buying this T-shirt like in ways that we never really imagined, right? We've just started Clothing the Gap at this point. And there's a line down the street. And
literally a line down the street, lining up to buy your merch.
To wear to a protest for the Black Lives Matter movement.
Wow, man.
And it got to the point where I was a bit like, why haven't we always had this support? Why are all these fellas wanting to buy a T-shirt now? Why didn't they already have one? And it was, I think, monumental for Clothing the Gaps, but from what I've heard from a lot of other Black businesses, this was probably a time when they saw non-Indigenous people, you know, take that action, start to support Black businesses, and everyone's business sort of grew at that point.
Yeah.
So in the midst of a little bit of frustration around why didn't you already have a tee, I sold T-shirts I didn't have, and it was the best business decision I've ever made.
Go back to that. You were selling T-shirts that you didn't have.
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
Online.
So they order.
And you didn't get it for 4 weeks.
Oh my gosh. I love that, man. Talk about.
But it was able to, people go, we've never had any grants, no philanthropy, and a lot of social enterprises, which is what we are, they're profit for purpose businesses. They're not able to operate as successful businesses without top-ups from other funding.
Of course.
And like that's one thing I'm super proud of with Clothing the Gaps is that we're completely independent.
Love it.
And some of those are decisions that sort of went with this T-shirt, like, well, we've, you know, you waited for that, but that funded us and also built our profile, also built our mailing list and all of those things that were able to sort of sustain us into the future. It also was a moment where we dressed a whole lot of non-Indigenous people for the first time in a Black T-shirt.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how that felt for them, but it was probably a new experience.
Yeah. And I would say that more and more people are now going, hey, well, I've got one tee. What else do you have? Have you found that they're actually repeating customers? They're coming back and buying more?
Yeah.
Because you're dropping all different things. You're part of the Free the Flag. That was huge, you know, for us to, well, the Australian government bought back the copyright, right, of the flag, but you put out a whole lot of T-shirts to start these conversations. Yeah. And then all the resources. So you can get online, get onto the website, go to your Insta. You've got all these resources there for people to have these conversations. And you've also clearly labelled your merch on your website ally friendly or mob only. So that's to kind of stop all the calls and inquiries. Can I wear this? Is this appropriate? So if you have not yet jumped onto Clothing the Gap's website, and there's history there, you should Google actually Clothing the Gaps and look at the fight, the struggle with the Gap over in the US, all during COVID as well. You kind of, it's not that you lost the lawsuit, you had to change your branding to put an S on the end. Yeah. What was that like in terms of the fact that, okay, you had to rebrand? Yeah. Did that create?
It was like the Gap Clothing, the US American giant, you know, said that our brand was so close to theirs, it was deceptive. So you might get confused. And I'm saying this like I don't think it's confusing at all. The Gap Clothing, American giant, and Clothing the Gap. Like clearly we create merch with a message. Most of it's red, black and yellow. It looks, no one. You would never get confused. It was so funny because I thought when I called Clothing the Gaps that the Australian government might come for me because it is a play on words for closing the gap.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. I never expected the American giant to come after us. But at the same time, I had that cease and desist. I just put it away in the drawer, like, yeah, just go away, you know. Like I did one of those because we didn't have the money or the resources to sort of deal with it. And I would spend nights and nights thinking, what are we going to call ourselves? We don't have money. No one, we're too small for any law firm to want to work pro bono with us. We're like, we'll change our name. I was thinking, what other names could we be? And mind you, we had another cease and desist for using the Aboriginal flag from Wham Clothing. We've got all these cease and desist. We're like, ooh, another day. And we're like, oh, maybe we could call ourselves Shady Blacks. But then Slim Shady. So anyway, and it was so all these things. Whilst we're not dealing with those things, we're building momentum and education and raising awareness about the Aboriginal flag copyright online and getting all this organic traction and support for this cause. And then people started to learn and know the name Clothing the Gaps. And I thought, no, I actually really want to fight for that name now.
Yeah.
And when it come to the point of legal rep for the Free the Flag, all these copyright lawyers are like, pick me.
Wow, you had a choice.
A choice.
Yeah.
But I chose a lawyer who was actually the partner that rang me. I was like, if the partner's going to ring me, tick.
Yeah.
The other thing that set this, Peter, apart from everyone else, is he called me about 7:30 at night, and I don't know about you, like, I'm not a 9 to 5 kind of girl, and the fact someone's going to ring me at 7, like, then it probably means I can call him at 9.
That's commitment.
At night he's got to answer. So it was that, and I got a bit cheeky, and I was actually on my way to Project TV to talk about this flag thing. I'm on this call to this, partner, and I said, look, Pete, if I give you the job, this is how it works. I said, will you take on this gap case as well? And he said, sure, I'll do both.
Yes.
And this is, I guess a shout out to FAL IP lawyers, is that they never counted the amount of hours they worked on Free the Flag. They worked an enormous amount of hours and then represented us against.
OMG, FAL lawyers. I'm just thinking of Harriet. I don't know if you've ever met Harriet. I met this amazing woman from FAL lawyers, and she messaged me just this morning on my LinkedIn. So anyways, I've heard of FAL lawyers.
Yeah. So it was amazing, I'd say, like a friendship that I built with Peter, and I think that's what you need when you're in the trenches of a lawsuit. And it was amazing.
And I want to ask you, in terms of, partnerships, how important is that kind of collaboration between mob and non-Indigenous people as well? So you've got one in terms of your business partner.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because Sarah and I are both public health professionals, so we never set out to start a fashion label. But now the fashion label funds the Clothing the Gaps Foundation, which is a not-for-profit, to run the health initiatives we want to see in communities.
Wow.
So we're essentially using fashion to fund health promotion. And, yourself, like when you're in business and you find a business partner, it's like finding a husband. All the legalities of it, like she's in my will. I'm like, this is so weird. We are so entwined in a business sense. And sometimes I think, what would it look and feel like if I did this on my own? And the pressure of that and the stress of that, like something shared in business that feels so big. And I think the fact that Sarah's, because the fact that she's not Aboriginal means that often I'll give her, she's able to hold the things that I can't. So it frees me up to do the leadership. I'm still very much, I'm CEO, but I'm head of creative.
Yeah.
Because that's the most, for me, that's the critical point in the business. It's not necessarily what the clothes look like. I've got young people they're all over that.
Yeah.
But how do we talk about the messages?
Yeah.
What messages, I think my experience is, what messages are going to resonate with most of the mob? What causes are important? How do we talk about this? How do we market this? Whose educational resources do we share to support this T-shirt?
Yeah.
What are those conversations we should be having in community? What do they look like? Whose voices do we need to add to that? Like, that is my work. And I'll find that's work Sarah can't do, but she's doing things like HR. We employ 32 black fellas now. She's doing insurances, for things that I didn't even know you need insurance for, and lots of other things that's allowed us to sort of grow. And we haven't even had time yet to sort of say, hey, is this really what we want to do? Because we left FARS together to do health promotion. Now you're queen of operations and I'm designing T-shirts.
Yeah.
We were dressed up as carrots before.
Yeah.
3 years ago, we were a carrot. Dragging out vending machines out of co-ops and getting people to exercise more. And now I'm doing this. Like, I'm not sure how it happened.
No, but it's happening. And this is what we've now signed up for. And, I know that being in business, we, just as mob, like, we give it 150% because we know there's a lot of people that rely on us in terms of how many staff?
32.
And how many are mob?
Oh, over 90%.
There you go, right? And you know that they then support their families and communities, that trickle effect, that flow-on effect. I want to talk about, education, business and leadership. The three of them, kind of are all equally important. What do you think about the three, education, business and leadership?
I think if we just sold T-shirts, we wouldn't be as successful as what we are. What we're selling is education. And if you look at our our feed, there's as much education on there as there is fashion. It's a mix, like it goes hand in hand. And yeah, I don't think we would have the success if there weren't all three elements built into the business and with equal weight and equal importance.
And in terms of, you know, just the future of Indigenous businesses, what's your view, or what do you hope to see?
I'm super excited about it. I think I mentioned earlier it wasn't something that I was exposed to growing up, that we've got those options. I'm very much in the fashion industry. Absolutely love it. I love it because of the visibility of it, and I love it that I can, you know, easily identify people in a room and know who most likely I might want to have a drink with. Or connect with, because that person's literally telling me, hey, I support black fellas and I care about black fellas causes. So that level of, like, I believe cultural safety, it creates in spaces for me, it keeps me doing it. And I think our clothes have done a lot for reconciliation in this country. So what does that mean for businesses coming through? I think Clothing the Gap has been able to essentially not just sell to mob, but create an invitation for non-Indigenous people to speak into and tell them it's okay to wear this. So for the next Indigenous designer, the next brand that comes in, you've got an audience that's really, like, they've
ready.
Worked through it.
They're ready.
And I talk about decolonising your wardrobe, and there is so much room for all of our wardrobes to be black. And I'm talking from your socks, and they don't even have to have Aboriginal design and undies on them. People are getting more conscious about what they buy. Like, we can get our staples and have them owned by a black brand. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be a cultural thing.
It does not. That's what I'm thinking. Like, you know, look, there's a book here, right? This book here, Cultural Choice, Black Business. The earrings that I'm wearing, the T-shirt, the tote bag. Like, if you support Indigenous businesses, you are making a direct impact in our families and our communities, because Indigenous businesses are 100 times more likely to employ mob and 100 times more likely to retain them. For every $1 that you invest or spend with a black business, there is a $4.41 in terms of the social return and social impact that creates for every $1. So you just think about that in terms of buying from Indigenous businesses, whether it's a T-shirt or whether it's stationery. Another one here is this deadly pen. Jared, my brother, a Quandamooka man from North Stradbroke Island, came up to me at a career expo in Brisbane recently and gifted me this beautiful pen with his artwork on it. I carry it with me everywhere and I lose pens, but not this one. So to wrap up this yarn, you know, this is about, you know, business, leadership, education, coming to university. What's your legacy?
I think there'll be probably a whole lot of T-shirts. It's a cool thing about Clothing the Gap's T-shirt. I think messages with a T-shirts with a political message that stand for something. Guess what? We don't donate them to the op shop. We hand them down. Our T-shirts are our stories of the struggle that we're experiencing at this time. So if you had a Free the Flag T-shirt, one day you'll pull that back out of your drawer and you'll tell your kids, hey, you know what? The flag wasn't always free. I think my T-shirts will be their legacy, you know, and I hope for, you know, I know for my family, they're already starting to dabble in business, and they wouldn't have if they wouldn't have seen me do that.
There's been too many goosebump moments just thinking about our children and the next generation and the opportunities that they have. Like, we are creating those foundations for them, and for non-Indigenous people that, you know, are committed to supporting us. Absolutely. To me, that speaks volumes. If you want to talk about reconciliation, how do we come together and truly reconcile or unite? It starts with conversations, and I hope that this podcast, for some of our listeners and viewers, was the moment where they said, I'm now going to go and have a conversation with my kids, with my family, or I'm now going to jump online and look into this business. So look, sis, thank you for everything that you do for us as Mob, that we've got more to choose from now than just the flag to go out and represent. And it's not just at a protest where we turn up every single day now, and whether we're going for a run, whether we're going to the gym, whether we're going to jump on a plane, we've got all these different options. And don't you worry, we still get the looks and stares, but there's this sense of pride that we're walking into these spaces and we're representing our people, and we're also supporting Black businesses. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure yarning with you, and I can't wait to get you back on the podcast and just hear more of your amazing story and your family's contribution to this country through the Aboriginal Health Organisation in Fitzroy. So thank you.
No worries. Thanks, Mara.
How deadly was Laura? Literally, the yarn, the stories, you know, where she has come from to where they are now with Clothing the Gaps. It's just amazing to hear people like Laura, that's grassroots, come from community and has seen an opportunity in terms of being in business to then go back to community and create the impact that she was doing when they were delivering the health promotion programs with the local Aboriginal Medical Service. Laura is an absolute powerhouse of a woman with her side hustle, the Koorie Circle, the amazing earrings that her and now her daughter is actually part of that business. Jump on Instagram, follow them, get onto Clothing the Gaps, get some merch. It is leading up to Christmas time, so just think about what Indigenous suppliers are you buying from. Maybe it could be Clothing the Gaps as well as Koorie Circle. But I know that Laura would want me to say this, that there are so many amazing, thriving Indigenous businesses today. Jump online, do your research, and hopefully you can start engaging with more Indigenous businesses, peoples, and communities. On that note, bye for now.
This episode is proudly supported by Monash University, promoting the Master of Indigenous Business Leadership program. For more information, head to the link in our show notes or visit www.monash.edu/Indigenous-business-leadership.
Don't forget to follow Black Magic Woman podcast on all social media platforms. To keep up to date with the latest episodes and news, head to blackmagicwoman.com.au. You can rate and review the podcast on iTunes, and please feel free to share the podcast with your family and friends.